Hello, everyone. My name is Mike Roa, and I'm with North Bay Science Discovery Day. I want to welcome you to the 2021 Discovery Day. Today, we're going to be hearing from Debra Klein with the Planet Bee Foundation, and Debra is going to be talking with us about why are there different kinds of bees. First, though, we have some rules we'd like you to go along with. Rename yourself so that you only use your first name. We've got a number of people on this event, so use your first name only. Keep your video off unless you're okay with being recorded, because we are recording this session. Stay muted unless we ask you to speak up. If you have a question, send it via chat and we'll get to it as quickly as possible. And remember to keep it all focused on the presentation. Thank you very much. And Danielle, take it away.
All right, hello everybody. Welcome to our presentation called Adapta-bee-lity. We are here to spend some time learning about different types of bees and why they are also different. So the first thing I'm going to do is show you an amazing short little video that is going to give you a quick glimpse at some of the beautiful and amazing native bees. Our bees are having so much fun, they want to dance again. Okay, so welcome to Planet Bee's presentation of Adapta-bee-lity. We are the Planet Bee Foundation. We are here to change the world one bee and one student at a time. We teach kids about bees and bees about kids. Okay, and in our lesson today, we are going to use math to help us understand how native bees survive in their environments. So you may be very familiar with the honeybees and bees that you see around you, but we have native bees that actually live in very different climates and have to live very different lives. Okay, so first let's take a look at our native bees and our honeybees. Our honeybees are the ones that you see living in the white bee house boxes. They can be other colors too, traditionally are white, in large colonies and hives that have up to 50 or 60,000 bees. Today, our focus though is going to be on the native bees. Those are bees like your bumblebees, your carpenter bees, and some others that we are going to look at. there are over 4,000 species of those bees. And instead of living in large colonies, they live throughout the wild in a variety of habitats, including wooden spaces, underground, all sorts of things that we're going to look at today. Now, you will have a chance to participate a few different times during our conversation today. So there will be times for you to please share your answers in the chat box, and we will work together. All right, so what does it mean to be native? When we say that we're talking about native bees, that means that they are from the place where they live. So like a polar bear is originally thought of from the Arctic. That's where you find them in their natural habitat. Our native bees are native to North America, meaning that they have been here since the start of time in the area, unlike honeybees that have been brought here from European countries for the purposes of pollination and honey. Okay? Native bees are found in every continent of the world except for Antarctica. So that means that they have adapted in a lot of different ways to be able to live in some very, very different climates. The bees that are living in South America are not going to live the same type of habitat as bees that are found in northern parts of North America. So that is why we are going to take some time to learn about adaptations and what that means for our bees. Okay, so before we get too deep into our bees, just to understand a closer look at a bee, we have all the parts of an insect that make an insect what they are to be classified that way. They have the 2 antennas, the 4 wings, the thorax, the hairy legs, the abdomen, and some of the other parts that you look for in an insect, like the compound eyes and things like that. Okay, so we have a variety of native bees here that look very, very different from each other. Some of these you saw in the video, as well as other ones. But if you notice, they are not the typical yellow and black coloring that you see in your honeybees. Does anyone want to take a second and share in the chat why they think some of these bees look so different? Any ideas? Yes, because they live different lives. Anything else? You have to attract mates. Okay. Different food and camouflage. Those are all great reasons why these bees would look very, very different. Yeah, they have lots of different colors and body structures too. Do you notice some of the fuzz on some of them that others do not have? This one down here in the middle is almost bald compared to some of his fuzzy, furry friends. Let's take a closer look at why that happens. Okay, so these bees have had to adapt, and to adapt means to change. Adaptations are the changes that a living organism makes to be able to survive in its environment. So just like all of you that were chatting to me that those bees live in different places and need camouflage of different places and different food types, you are exactly right. Their adaptation is a survival mechanism. Without it, they may not blend in to where they need to be. A bright white bee from a snowy area wouldn't fit in very well in a desert. Okay, so before we take a look at bees, we're going to kind of take a look at what adaptations are in general. What do humans need to survive in these different places? So again, if you want to chat to me, these are 4 very different regions, but what would you need if you lived here? Would you need the same things in the Arctic in that snowy environment as you need in the desert? Definitely need food in all of them, no matter what. Shelter is very important as well. Keep your chats coming. Yes, there's lots of heat in some of them and not so much heat in others. So you would definitely have to make sure you adapt to that, and definitely water. And clothes are important too, no matter where you're at. But would your clothing be the same if you lived in the snow versus the desert? Where I live, our snow is finally just starting to melt. We can finally wear a t-shirt outside, but I definitely would not be walking around that way out here in the snow, where in the desert, I don't think I would want to bundle up like I have been all winter. Okay, so absolutely right with your answers here. So here, like you said, we need shelter. We need food, we need water. We also need a safe space to grow and thrive. For a species, whether it's bees or humans, to continue, you need to be safe. So whether that's at home with your family, or whether you are a baby bee that has been tucked neatly and carefully into a tube space by your mom and left in a safe place to grow until you become an adult. That's what that picture is down there, is taken of a bee house, which we'll get into those. Okay. So a human adaptation that you have that you use every day that you may not even realize is that your human hands are an adaptation that help you survive. The fact that you have thumbs. If any of you have dogs or pets at home and you look at their paws versus your hands, they do not have the thumbs to wiggle and grab things that you have. So if you have a minute or have an object in front of you, if you were to try to pick that up without using your thumbs, you may gain a new appreciation for them. You'll see how much harder it would be if you did not have that adaptation. And yes, basically bee moms do send their kids to their rooms till they're adults. That was in the chat. So keep that in mind. How lucky you are that you are not in your room until you become 18. All right, so how is each animal adapted for survival in these pictures? So again, if you want to chat to me, we have a wide variety of animals here that are adapted in a wide variety of ways. Yep, the fox has fur, so fur is definitely an adaptation that would help with warmth. The white bunny, yep, blends in with that snowy environment behind them. Camouflage, yep, thick fur, the trunk. The trunk helps the elephant. Okay, it'd be awfully hard, as tall as elephants can be, to be able to bend over to drink. So that trunk is definitely handy. What else? Do we see that otter? How is that otter carrying their food? Do you carry your food? If you want a bag of potato chips, are you going to pick them up the same way and carry them like that otter is? Right. So using their mouth when they need to rely on their paws and feet to walk on, they're able to carry things within their mouths. All very helpful if you are one of those animals needing to survive. So we are going to take a look at two different types of adaptations today. We have structural adaptations as well as behavioral adaptations. Structural adaptations are like the elephant's trunk. It is a structure of their body. Don't worry, we're going to look at that a little more. I know these are some big words, but we're going to make it easy. Behavioral adaptations are like the otter, being able to carry food in their mouth to transport it instead of just dragging it around through the dirt as they're trying to walk and drag food. All right, so our structural adaptations, think of your structure. It's how something is built or organized. So you have that picture of a bridge, the structure of a bridge. Every time you cross one, you're hoping that's a very strong structure that's well built to hold you up. Just like the structure of your body are your bones, you rely on them. Without them, you'd be kind of like a limp noodle rolling around. You wouldn't be able to stand up straight and tall. Well, structural adaptations are a structure of the animal's body that help them to survive in some way. So it's a part of them that they rely on, that is been there since birth and will be there their entire lives, like the elephant's trunk. Okay, next we have, if we keep going, so one way to look at structural adaptations, okay, and you can think of this too as we're working through this to help you identify the difference between structural and adaptation, is making an S, okay, a sign language S. So every time you see one, you can do that. It'll help you to link those adaptations to the idea that it's a structural one. And you will start to really see for yourselves how well adapted animals and bees really are. Okay, so then we have structural adaptations here. Why are giraffes' necks so long? Why do elephants need those long trunks? And why would the bunnies be white? So again, feel free to chat your thoughts to me. Okay. Why would a giraffe need a neck that is so incredibly long? I mean, my neck's not that long, and I definitely wouldn't fit in my house very well, but why is it important for a giraffe? Yes, they need them for their food. They need to be able to reach. They are dining. See those trees in the distance? That's their dinner plate. They have to be able to reach up into those branches. Even that baby giraffe has to reach pretty far. What about the elephant's trunks? I would make a huge mess if I had to drink that way. Why does it work for an elephant? Yep, they have to be able to. They are so tall, they don't have the flexibility. Imagine if that elephant had to bend way down. Sometimes their water sources are very small and very low. They would not be able to get there. They also need to shower. That is how they clean themselves. So yes, okay, they spray water on their backs. They will spray mud on themselves too to help with insect control so that those pesky flies are not bothering them in the heat. There's lots of uses for that trunk. And that bunny, why does the bunny need to be white? Yep, the bunny needs camouflage. So that is an Arctic hare. They need to be able to be white during the time of the snow. That bunny will actually change color though. As the snow melts and the summertime comes on, they will change to be a brown color to then camouflage in with the trees and vegetation that comes out in the summer. So it's kind of like shedding. But if you could do that, if I could shed and wake up with different colored hair, I don't know what color I'd go for, but it'd be interesting. Okay, so we have the giraffes with the long necks. Now we're going to move on to some behavioral adaptations. Behavioral adaptations are a behavior, so it's not an actual structure of the animal or organism's body, like the trunks and the necks. It is a behavior that helps them to survive. So, like this child that is choosing to do the behavior of being silly, okay, some of our behaviors are choices, and some of them are things we just do instinctually that you do every day without even thinking about them. Like this mama bird in the middle. Animals have many behaviors that they do in order for survival. The mama bird feeding the babies because the babies are not able to collect food on their own. And the otter, again, carrying their food by their mouth because they need to move it, but they don't want to drag it through the ground in the mud. So they're able to use their mouths. And again, if you would like, as you are working through these, every time you think you see a structural adaptation where we made that S, with behavioral, you can make yourself a bee. Okay, just to help, it links that brain. It's one of those adaptations that we as humans have, that the more we interact with information, the more you will remember it. Okay, so what behaviors are these animals showing us? Again, feel free to chat to me what you see that these animals are doing to help themselves survive. Why is that coyote curling up? Why is the otter carrying the plants? And why does that mama bird have to feed its babies that way? I know when my kids were little, I did not feed them quite that way, but why does it work for birds? Okay, so the otter, yep, is carrying it because that's where sometimes they are not safe to eat where they gather their food. They need to take it to their den to be able to eat in a safe place or to save it for later, and they don't want it dirty. Why is the coyote curled up? What behavior is that? Yep, staying warm, absolutely. Okay, so the coyote needs to keep warmth into their body, and by curling up, it keeps that body closer and able to keep in a higher amount of warmth than if they were stretched out. And the baby birds, why are they feeding that way? Yes, absolutely. They can't get their own food. And again, mama bird does not have hands. She needs her wings to fly, so she must carry the food in her mouth. And that is the easiest way for her to then transfer it to her babies. Okay, so all of these are examples of amazing adaptations that nature has gifted our animal friends to be sure that they are able to survive. Now, how does all this matter to bees? We came to focus on bees today. What is different about these two bees? What do you see? Anything you've noticed? Chat to me. There's one that is fuzzy. Yep. What else? One is bald, different colors. One is in the act of pollinating. Yes, very good. We'll get to that too. One looks like it has a metal shell. It's not metal, but it's the black and white photo making it look like it's a night bee in its shining armor, ready to do battle. But yes, they are different colors, different patterns. One is fuzzy, one is not. So why would that bee be hairy? And why would that other bee not be hairy? Any thoughts? Yes, the wings are different. And yes, it does have to do with pollen. All of you are on a great roll today. Okay, so hairy bees are able to collect pollen on the hairs of their body to carry it to where they are nesting to use for food later on. And yes, I see some of you saying that the hair also has to do with the temperature, and we are definitely going to get to that. It helps with pollen as well as warmth. The bee that is not hairy, though, still needs pollen. All bees do. How is this bee going to get its pollen back to its home? Any thoughts? How will the bald bee eat? No idea? That's okay. Let's see. So this type of bee and the species that do not have the hairy bodies rely on what's called a crop. A crop is a small organ inside of their body that allows them to carry pollen inside, and kind of the cool but gross part is that they can regurgitate it or spit it up later for the purpose of either feeding to their offspring or storing away for themselves later on. So they are basically pulling it into a little pouch inside of their bodies that they will use it later. Okay. Structural adaptations like crops and hairy bodies allow bees to perform behavioral adaptations like gathering food and pollinating plants. Okay, so your structural adaptations go hand in hand with your behavioral adaptations. The structures help the behaviors. Pollination is important for plants to survive. So those behaviors are collecting food for the bees, helping the plants to pollinate and survive, as well as helping other species who then rely on those plants for either habitat or food themselves. Okay, this is a short video on pollination. We're just going to take a quick look at what happens when a bee visits a flower.
So when a bee lands on a flower to get food, it gets pollinated. A piece of pollen accidentally gets knocked off her body and goes into the middle of the flower and down a tube called the stigma to the ovary where it gets fertilized. The seeds inside the ovary start to grow and turn into a piece of fruit. Remember the pumpkin? That's how it grew.
Okay, so from that small bee visiting a flower, and it is able to grow into a large fruit like a pumpkin.
So when a bee lands on a flower to get food, it gets pollen.
All right, so how do bees remove that pollen? Can they take a bath to get it off? Nope, they cannot take a bath. They have to remove that pollen by either removing it from their body by shaking it off or licking it off. They have behavioral adaptations because they cannot crawl into a bathtub. Okay, they comb it off, they lick it, and remove it with those behaviors. Now here we have another bee with another type of adaptation. Is this structural or behavioral? What do we think? Any guesses? So they have this long tongue called a proboscis. What would that be? Is that a structure on their body? Or is it a behavior that they're doing? Very good. Lots of you are saying structural. You are absolutely correct. So I hope you're making those S's. Okay, it is a structural adaptation that allows the bees to drink nectar and water. Okay, just like the elephant's trunk. Sometimes bees have to reach way down into a flower. Yes, absolutely like a butterfly. Okay, they have to reach so far down that having a proboscis allows them to reach what they need, as well as when they need to get water, sometimes they cannot land too close. They don't want to fall in. They're not very good swimmers. It allows them to drink at a safe distance. And kind of like an anteater. Very good thoughts. You are making great connections to our bees. Okay, and this type of bee, what type of adaptation does this bee have? Some bees have giant jaws. This is our bee friend, the carpenter bee, and it is a structural adaptation. I see a mix of what you're, okay, so their structural adaptation of their jaws allows carpenter bees to chew through wood to make their nest. So you can see that wooden hole, that is a carpenter bee home. Now, one thing with our carpenter bees, do not mistake them for a pest. Some do because they chew those holes. However, unlike a termite that will keep chewing till they destroy things, a carpenter bee is just looking for a safe place to nest, to lay its eggs. Okay, so once they hatch and move on, you can fill the hole and the bee is gone. No damage done. All right, so that structure of their giant jaws allows them to complete the behavior of chewing to create a home. Like we said, our native bees do not live in hives. They live solitary lives in the wild. So they often need to create their home. So the structure of his jaws allows the chewing that is necessary to make that home and build her nest for her young. Now, how would a bee adapt to a snowy environment like this? As a human, I live in an area where there's a lot of snow. I can put on a warm coat and warm clothes. Can our bee do that? What do they need in this area? I see fuzz, fur, lots. Some saying they couldn't live there. They can. They do. But yes, they need lots of that fuzz as well as, so the hair would be a structure that allows them to survive. But there's also some behaviors. Okay, so long hair traps air and warms the bee, just like a coat does for a human. That is a structural adaptation, but we also have a behavior. Have you ever wondered, why do bees buzz? Anyone ever pondered that? What that buzzing is from a bee? It is them rubbing their wings together, rapid flapping of their wings, true. Why? Does it just happen on accident because they're moving so fast that they don't even, doesn't serve any purpose for them? Or is there an actual reason for a bee to buzz? Lots of great thoughts. How about if we find out? Communicating, yep, staying warm. Let's see. Okay, so here we have a flower with a bee. This is a bumblebee. Saying buzzing is a behavioral adaptation that bees use for, do you see that bee? As it's buzzing against that flower, can you see what is happening? Yes, there's pollen, okay? Pollen is coming off that flower. If you can see that fine powder, it's near the hind legs of that bee. Yes, it is pollen falling off, because as that bee is buzzing on that flower, it is doing something called buzz pollination. Bumblebees especially are excellent at buzz pollination. They can get pollen out of a flower that is so deep down that even other bees can't reach it. Because as they buzz, they shake the flower with their wings and their bodies, which causes the pollen to come loose. Okay, So it helps them with food, and it also helps to keep them warm. Just like for you, when you exercise, how do you feel after running around with friends playing, or a gym class, maybe playing a sport? How do you feel after that? I know tired, definitely. How about, yep, exhausted, sweaty, hot, warm, yep. So that bee pollinating and buzzing also is helping with the bee's body temperature. That very rapid movement is helping to keep that bee warm. Okay, in climates like this. Looks very, very cold here. Okay, so bees in these cold climates have to adapt in a few ways. For one, they live 11 months. They are developing underneath the ground. Why do you think that in colder climates like the Arctic, bees would have to be underground developing? What would be different between underground and above ground? Yes, warmer and safer. They definitely go hand in hand. So yes, not only safe from a predator, but safe from snow. Okay, underground holds in more heat. They are protected from that frost and that snow, the wind, and the bitter cold. So a bumblebee in the Arctic, bumblebees like to nest underground in darker cavities. They will find a place, and yes, I know some of you are asking about permafrost. We are not talking as far as north as like Antarctica, where everything is permafrost. We are focusing on the Arctic Circle, which is the northernmost part of North America. They are slightly different. The Arctic Circle does still have a summer. There are periods of time that it thaws out. So we are looking at the area where they spend a lot of time in the snow, and even their summer is not that warm, but it's warm enough for them to come above the ground. So they will find a place to bury their eggs and nest under the ground, where they will first become a larva, then a pupa, until they are ready to emerge as an adult. But here's a little glimpse at their life cycle. So the parts that are under the ground as they are developing, to the above ground when they emerge as that adult bee. So what are they waiting for? How does a bee know when it's time to come out, when it's safe? Okay, how do you know when you are ready to go outside? Well, on a rainy, really cold day, you're probably not going to spend too much time outside, but yes, they need daylight, they need warmth, they need certain temperatures. Absolutely. Yep, sunny days. Very, very good. Okay, lots and lots of good thoughts going on. Thank you for sharing them. Okay, so when the temperature, the daylight, and the moisture are just right, adult bees are ready to emerge from the ground to forage, which forage means that they are looking for their food. They are hungry. If you spent a large amount of time underground waiting and not having much to eat, you would be quite hungry when you came out too. So the first thing they are going to do is find the nearest flower to get a snack. Okay, so how does that sunlight affect them? Some of you were already saying that they were waiting for daylight, a sunny day, for that warmth. Well, how does it affect them? Let's see what happens to an environment when the sun comes out after some snow or some chilly days. Okay, you can see as we start this little time-lapse video, right? In the beginning, those flowers are covered in snow and ice, just like our bee would be as it was underground waiting. But as time passes and the sun emerges, the snow melts away, the flowers are able to stand straight and tall to find that sunlight, and they are able to reach for the sun, warm up, open up. And when those flowers open up, what do you think that does for our bees? Any thoughts? Good. Yes, they are ready for food. Okay, so when that sun warms those flowers and those flowers emerge, the bees are ready. All right. Okay, so when we're saying we're talking about the Arctic Circle, how much sun do they get? How much time do those bees have? If the bees are relying on the sun to have the warmth and the flowers to pollinate, how much time do they get? 4 hours, a month, 6 hours, lots of different wide variety. Well, let's do a little math and we'll find out together. Okay, so only a portion of the day is sunny. Only a portion of the day is usable for the bees to forage. So like some of you are saying, some of them may only get a few hours some days, other days they will get more. But we have 24 hours in a full day. So from the beginning of a day at 12 midnight in the middle of the night to 11:59 at the very end of the day. In that amount of time, part of it is sunny, part of it is not. So just like for you, a bee has different behaviors for the different parts of the day. Now, we're going to do some fractions, okay? Out of the 24 hours of the day, a fraction or a part of that day is sunny. Fractions are good for showing things that are parts of a whole. It helps us to represent amounts of time that are less than the full day of 24 hours. So our bee friend has some decisions to make, and that bee needs help. So you are going to help me and help the bee decide if it is the right temperature for them to fly. Okay, so with our bee in January, they only get 4 hours a day of sunlight in the Arctic in January. That means that out of 24 hours in a day, only 4 hours of their time is sunny. Yes, you are right. Those of you that are great at your fractions, that is 1/6 of the day. 4 out of 24 can be simplified. Dividing them both by 4 becomes 1/6. Okay, so how many hours of that day, if we look at our daylight here in the yellow, but then what's the difference? So if 4 hours of the day are sunny, how many hours are dark? 5/6 if you want to write it as a fraction, and yes. Okay, 20 hours of the day. So if you were to count up our graph is counting by a scale of 2. Okay, you can see along the side here on your y-axis, you can see the numbers counting by 2. 20 hours of our day is dark. So is the bee getting much time to forage and eat? Not very much at all. Let's see if there's a better time of year for the bees. Okay, hopefully there are some times of year that give them a little bit more time to forage than that. So unfortunately for our poor bee friend, with only 4 hours of the day being sunlight, they're not going to be able to forage and actively pollinate. It's not enough time during that cold time of year to warm things up enough, to melt any snow, to raise the temperature, and the poor bee does not get to forage that day. But there's hope for our bee friend. This is a graph that is showing us throughout the year what the sunlight looks like in the Arctic Circle. Do you notice any times of year that may be better for our bee friends to forage and find food? June and July. Summer, what do you notice particularly about June and July? All day sun, yes. In the Arctic Circle during the peak of the summer, they do not have any dark. It does not set. So a great time if you are a bee to fill your belly and be ready for that winter when you may not be outside so much. 24 hours of sun, yeah, some of you are saying you would not like that, but that's Some would, some not. Yep, you need your sleep. So it's definitely a different lifestyle than what most of us are used to. Okay. What about other times of the year besides June and July? Any other times look like they could work out for the bee to pollinate and forage? May would be good. Any others? So looking at May, you still have quite a bit of sunlight. August, yes. Okay, even times like over here in the fall of September and October, you're still getting quite a bit of sun. Then you get into November and December, not so much. So let's take a closer look at May and August, or March and August. March and August, if you look, what do you notice about the amount of sun and dark that they have, amount of daylight and nighttime? Yes, they are equal. Okay, so you have this 12 hours of each, 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night. So if you are a bee in the Arctic during this time of year, you have half the day to forage and half the day to sleep or hibernate, to hide, depending on the temperatures. Okay, so you have at least 12 hours. Do you think our bee friend may be a little happier this time of year? In January, our poor bee was crying. Do you think our bee is going to be a little happier? Okay, so let's see if half of the day or 12 out of those 24 hours is enough to make our bee friend happy, hopefully. We don't want another crying bee. Yes. Okay, so this bee is celebrating 12 out of 24 hours. That does simplify to a half as a fraction. That they are able to fly and forage, fill their bellies, have plenty of food to pollinate, help those plants continue as well as themselves. That is a happy bee. Okay, so the Arctic blooms when there is sun. The temperatures rise. We already looked at it, helps to melt away the snow. We've talked about the hairs that the bees have. The higher the temperature on a thermometer, the rises the liquid on a thermometer. So if you're reading a thermometer, you want to look for the higher liquid level is a higher temperature. You can see that our one thermometer is showing a temperature of 80, which would be a nice warm day. And the colder temperature is down to 20. Not a very good day for a bee. But how exactly do those temperatures affect bees? We talked about that buzzing. I hope you've kept that in mind. But bees have to be warm in order to forage, which means that they have to be warm in order to actively find food. But they like to be a temperature of around 86 degrees. As humans, we like a temperature of around 98. So when your grown-ups are taking your temperature and deciding if you are a normal temperature or have a fever, they are looking to see if you are around 98 or higher for a temperature. Bees, they like to be around 86. That's their comfortable, happy place where they feel like they can fly, forage, and be active. But sometimes, especially in that Arctic, it's rare that those days get to 86, only a very small time of year. What can a bee do on a day that's not 86? Well, what do you do to raise your temperature? We said before, after a long day of playing and running around, your temperature goes up. You said you feel warm and sweaty. Yes, a lot of yours. Yep. So a bee can exercise. Do you think the bee plays soccer or tag with their friends to warm up? You never know. Have to spend a day with a bee, I guess, to truly find out. But they can buzz. So that buzzing is not just an accident. It's not just something that's happening because of their wings flapping so fast, creating a sound. It does serve a purpose for our bee friends. Not only is it helping with that buzz pollination, but it is going to help with their temperature. That is their exercise. So the next time you want to warm up when it's chilly, just walk around buzzing. Okay, your friends and family will love it if you walk around buzzing. Bees can raise their temperature as much as 60 degrees at one time by buzzing. They don't always need to be 60 degrees warmer, but if they need to, they can. They can buzz enough that if their temperature is, say, 20, if the air temperature is keeping them at 20 degrees, by buzzing, they could add another 60 degrees to their total body temperature. It's pretty amazing considering how small they are and considering how much of a temperature difference that is. If your temperature went from up 60 degrees when you were playing, if you started out at a normal temperature and you raised your temperature by 60 degrees, you'd have quite the fever. So bees, again, want their temperature to be either greater than or equal to 86. Okay, so a little bit more of those math symbols. Remember, the alligator wants to eat the larger number. If they get a little above 86, that's okay. But they want to be at least 86. So let's take a look at some examples of what that means. If you look at our thermometer, okay, the red part is showing you that the air temperature on this particular day is pretty chilly. They are at around 19 degrees. With buzzing, the bee can add an additional 60 degrees. So taking that air temperature, what the bee already is, buzzing like crazy, would they be able to fly? Is this enough? Would they be able to reach the temperature of at least 86 degrees that they need to be? So for you mathematicians, what do you think? Add it up. Can they fly yet or not? See lots and lots of no's. So if we start with adding our ones, right? Then adding our tens. What do we come up with? 79. Is 79 greater than or less than 86 that the bee needs? Okay, so prepare yourselves because our next bee, don't know that that bee is going to be all that terribly happy. Our bee was really wanting to fly that day, but unfortunately, our poor bee has to stay home. They cannot be actively out foraging in that temperature. So all that buzzing and hard work still is not quite enough. But there's hope for our bee. A few days later, we are at 26 degrees with the air temperature. The bee buzzes like crazy, buzzes her little heart out. She adds 60 more degrees to her temperature. Can she fly? Help me, help our bee. She's trying to make a decision. Okay, so we add our ones, we add our tens, and can our bee fly? Are we going to have another sad, sad bee? It's always a sad day when the bees cry. Oh, this is one happy bee. This bee reached a temperature of 86, the minimum she needs, and she can fly. She is happy to go. So yes, that bee will be actively foraging that day and pollinating the plants, which is helping the plants and everyone else. So which adaptation or which bee do you think out of these two, our two bee friends we saw earlier, which one is better suited? Now that you know the purpose of hair in a bee's life, now that you have a little glimpse of what their life is like in the Arctic, would it be bee number 1? We'll make this one over here bee number 1 or bee number 2. Any thoughts? Which one would survive the best? Okay, yes, I think we all agree bee number 2 is better adapted to that cold climate. Okay. We've learned a lot of words. We've looked at a lot of adaptations. Now, we have some pictures here, 4 of them. The first one, a proboscis to drink nectar and water. Tell me which picture is showing that proboscis, that structural adaptation that allows a bee to reach the nectar and the water. Yes, number 3, absolutely. How about which bee is buzzing to shake pollen from a flower? Which number photo is showing that bee using its buzzing for buzz pollination? Yes, number 4. Okay, and which one has the long hairs to stay warm and carry pollen? Yep, number 2. There's no tricking you. You have done a great job learning your adaptations today. And last but not least, which one is showing that bee underground to stay warm? Which bee is headed to the underground to be protected from temperatures, rain, and wind? Yes, absolutely. Okay, that bumblebee is headed in number 1. That bumblebee is showing you its underground nest. Okay, so there's your. Okay, so how long do adaptations take? They don't happen overnight. As long as humans have been around and as long as the Earth has been evolving, so have bees. Bees have taken very many generations, thousands of years to become the bees that we know them as. Okay, so they have adapted just like our lives have changed from caveman times to days like this where I can teach you over a computer. I know many of you are spread out all over different places. I myself am in Pennsylvania. So we can be miles apart and I can teach you about bees. So our bee friends have adapted as well. These adaptations like the proboscis, the buzz pollination are things that they have taken generations to learn, and those adaptations are passed between adults to offsprings. So the adaptations that the generation of bees right now have as they repopulate, as they lay eggs, their offspring will genetically inherit the adaptations from their ancestors. And as bees continue to evolve to meet the needs of their habitat, they will continue to pass those adaptations along. Just like you have adaptations from your family. Anybody have any adaptations from their family that you want to share, or anything that has been passed to you from your ancestors and family? I know my family, we all have blonde hair, blue eyes. We're all very pale because my ancestors come from a part of the world where it's very cold. They don't need necessarily to be protected from a lot of sun. They're going to bundle up. Yep, hair color, things. Okay, so that all comes from, different health concerns, different things like that can be passed too. Okay, so there are lots of genetic links and adaptations that we share with our families, even just what we started in the beginning of having thumbs. Okay, so we have structural, behavioral, cultural, all types of adaptations.
Miss Danielle, you have 2 minutes.
All right. Okay, and so we saw how bees adapt to their ecosystem to survive. A typical ecosystem, everything is connected. So an ecosystem includes everything that relies on the bee and everything the bee relies on. It includes the sunlight, the water. These bees are important to our ecosystems. Our ecosystems are ever changing, which is continuing to cause the need for adaptations as bees and other animals and organisms evolve through time. But we need to make sure that we are adapting our behaviors in a way to help the bees. Okay, so in our last minute or two here, we're just going to take a quick look at some things you can do to help make sure that those bees carry on for generations and are able to continue their pollination. Okay, so we can do things like reducing our emissions, reducing the amount of pollution, eating lower on the food chain. That just helps with, if you're eating more fruits and vegetables, there's less processes and less transportation, less caring for animals of things. You can ride your bike places, so you can use that mode of transportation instead of always using a car. Okay, there's other opportunities. You can turn out the lights, even little things like conserving your resources helps the bees, as well as being a champion for the bees and the earth by planting gardens, providing habitats. Okay, avoiding pesticides and chemicals, and just working together with your friends and your family to be aware of them. So thank you very much for joining us today. I've had a great time. You've been very active sharing with me, and I really, really appreciate it. I hope that you have learned a lot. I know I have. Any final questions from anybody before we have our last few minutes here? You are very welcome.
All
Okay,
right, thanks everyone.
Goodbye. Have a great rest of your